because I mean primarily it's I think I feel like I want to redo the entire seerah again. Like in a sense, I think some parts I rush through it, or Allahu Alam. I feel like doing it again. From the beginning, right? Because especially when it comes to lessons from or principles from the life of Rasulullah, I think some parts I went over it. So nice. And you feel like I didn't do a good job to go through it and go through it again. But that's the thing about it lah. When you study something, you never study it one time. You study it a few times, and then you really internalize this. And then it's also mentioned that by a lot of ulama, right, that the one thing we need to really focus on in our zaman is sirah. It's really the one thing you must focus on is sirah, right? Everything goes back to sirah, right? But it's because people don't see importance in the sirah. Right? They brush it aside. The life of Rasulullah Islam. How many people don't actually think that is one of the sciences of Islam that you should actually put in a lot of effort to study, right? This science. But then the ulama macam the Sahaba themselves, right? They go into it and they dwell, and then they go into the intricacies and the detail of it, everything. I mean, mashallah, but things that when you speak to people about sirah, and you're like, come on sirah class, they be like, stories. Right? They go like stories, it's not stories. It's everything, it's the whole religion, right, in these 23 years, and then it's your entire existence based on these 23 years, right? All of our lives will be based on these 23 years, right, of Rasulullah. So that makes it very weighty to study and to understand. I mean, subhanAllah, like to see, the more you learn sirah, the more you realize, mashallah, I feel like doing it again. I really feel like doing it again, especially since we got this book, after halfway through. We didn't do the first half, this is the second volume, we did the first volume kan. Right, so macam mashallah nak start again Can I have a lot more to go, because I want to go into the Khulafa Rashidin, I want to go into thereafter and everything, so I understand all this what happened to the Sahaba after the life of Rasulullah, and from there to draw examples from them, like how they applied the principles that they learned from Rasulullah in their lives. Right, so we see the application with the Sahaba without the Prophet. The Prophet's not there. What did they do? As the companions. So, mashallah. Okay, we'll start our lesson proper. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وبه نستعين على كل أمور الدنيا والدين والصلاة والسلام وأفضل الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا وقرة أعيننا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. نويت تعلم وتعليم فكر وتذكير ونفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقرب ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني وهب يغاني. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني وهب يغاني. اللهم نسألك العلم لدني والمشرب الصافي الهني وهب يغاني. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم في كل لحظة بدأ عاد خلق رضا نفس العاشر من كلماته. Alhamdulillah. Last time round, 2 weeks ago, right, we actually went into what caused Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to set forth, right, to conquer Makkah, right, because you mentioned that Hudaybiyah happened, and the peace treaty happened, right, just a few years prior to this, right, but it only lasted for about 2.5 years, right, it didn't last for very long, the treaty, even though it was signed 10 years, right, but the Quraysh, they were the ones who broke the treaty, and in fact, it was not just that their allies broke it, there were of them, we mentioned, who personally took part, right, in the attack, right, of the ally of the Muslims, right, the Khuza'a, right. So, and last week we mentioned, right, how the Khuza'a came to Rasulullah sallam to seek help, and we also mentioned how Abu Sufyan came to Medina to try and renew the treaty, but Rasulullah sallam turned away from him. We also mentioned about his daughter Habiba. I went to that story. So Habiba, right, how she she pulled the pillow of Rasulullah from under her own father, right, saying to him, that this is the pillow of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you are still kafir, so you are najis, right? And of course, a lesson from here is that Habiba, right, she's trying to get through to her father in doing what she did. She's trying to get through to him, right? This is basically the way why she was like this, right? Because she's saying, if in our time, right, you wouldn't do it, because for example, if somebody enter into Islam, and then their non-Muslim parents come along, right, you do honor them, in your household, right? But the big difference between Abu Sufyan's situation with Habiba and like our day lah, whereby you have like a convert, and then they have non-Muslim parents coming over, is that Abu Sufyan was well aware of the truth. He's not like someone, whereby they're unaware. Abu Sufyan was well aware, and Habiba knew her father was, had more intellect, right, than to remain a kafir like that. So she was trying to get through to him, in this way, and she knew that her father was a man of pride. He had a lot of pride, right? So this kind of treatment would actually get to him, right? It would actually hit him hard. And these are all the small, chipping away of the hardness in Abu Sufyan, right, that will eventually lead to his coming into Islam, right? He eventually comes into Islam, right? So but then in our time is different lah. In our time, the parents of a convert, right, might not know Islam very well. They might not be they might not understand the Quran. Of course they won't understand the Quran. It's in Arabic. Even Muslims struggle understanding the Quran. But Abu Sufyan, he understood the Quran, and he understood, and he knew, right, Rasulullah was a prophet, right? But it's just that he's not come around to being a Muslim lah, right? So in our time it's different lah, because the parents of converts, right, they are alien towards Islam. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. So our only message, the way of spreading the message to them, is by akhlaq. Right, that is the way of spreading. So that's why you see different. You can't just cut and paste, or just see, what she did. Okay, I'm going to do it to my parents also. No, it doesn't work that way, because Abu Sufyan is different, right? He's an Arab. He understands the Quran. He's been there since the very beginning. This is how many years already, right, of the message of Rasulullah. He was there from the very beginning, seeing Islam spread, right, in Makkah and then going to Medina. He watched the entire thing. How many years already, right? So until now, still not Muslim. So his daughter treated him that way lah. Until now, you still don't want to enter into Islam until now. When, right? So it's not the same as someone whose parent is completely unaware of Islam, never learned Islam, never seen Islam, right? And then you want to treat them harshly in that way. You probably drive them very far away from Islam instead of pulling them towards Islam. So for her, so we can't just take what she did and take it as like, oh, you see, it's proof. This is how you treat your non-Muslim parents. It's nonsense lah. Right? That's not how you do it. Right? For her, it was more of, she knew her father knew better. Alright, and it was one of some scholars say this is one of the ways by which she got to him. And it made him think lah. It made him think, because he knows his daughter to be, very respectful, and dutiful towards her father, right, towards her parents, right. So it made him think, because it's out of her love for him, right, that she really wants him to come into this religion, right, Habiba. Right, may Allah be pleased with her, radiallahu anha wa radaha. Right, we mentioned also the story of did I mention in brief the story of the woman that was sent, or did I go into detail?
The woman that was sent.
That means there was somebody, because it was supposed to be secret, right? It was a secret.
You mentioned it's
in brief, right? I didn't read through the story.
I've heard the story before.
Yeah, because I mentioned it before. In fiqh tahawula I mentioned it, right? But not here, right? So okay, Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, so basically Abu Sufyan was rejected, right? I went through. He went to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he went to Sayyidina Umar, he went to Sayyidina Uthman, went to Sayyidina Ali, right? And even in that, you see that there is a proof that even as a non-Muslim, Abu Sufyan, he recognized who were the best people, right? Who were the closest to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went in that order. Right, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Ali, and then we have Muslims who actually contend that, right? They contend that this is the order, the correct order of the Caliphate after Rasulullah. But you look here, even Abu Sufyan, he saw to go that way, right? The first person, the one next in line after Rasulullah is Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Right, he goes there, there is no, he didn't get anything from there. When Sayyidina Umar, even worse, he got angry with him. When Sayyidina Osman, you know what, said that, I stand by the Prophet. Right, Sayyidina Ali, same thing also, you're wasting your time. But then he saw Sayyidina Ali has wisdom, and Sayyidina Ali asked Sayyidina Ali for advice. Sayyidina Ali advised him, but it did not give him any benefit whatsoever at all. Right, and then he went back, and then his wife, Hind bin Utbah, his wife Hind bin Utbah censured him and scolded him and said, you made a fool of yourself going all the way there and talking to all these people, and nothing happened. Basically nothing happened. We had no renewal of treaty. So now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so now it's basically there was no conclusion. Alright, so the Quraysh, the allies of the Quraysh attacked the allies of the Muslims. They attacked. Amongst those who attacked were the Quraysh themselves, because they took part in the attack. They made it even worse. Alright, because it was just the ally against ally. Maybe you could have some other, argued it, but they in fact took part. And the Quraysh actually had a hand in attacking the allies of the Muslims. The allies of the Muslims they go to Medina, they complain, right? So some heard the complaints, and he said, you will be helped, you will be helped. He didn't say how. He said, you will be helped, you will be helped. Right? فَقَدْ نُصِرْتُمْ فَقَدْ نُصِرْتُمْ. Right? You will be helped, you will be helped. Or فَقَدْ نُصِرْتَ فَقَدْ نُصِرْتَ. Distraction. Right? So I said, you will be helped, you will be helped. Right? And he didn't say what he's going to do. Right? They leave, this tribe leaves, right? The Khuza'a, they leave. Abu Sufyan comes along, he goes there, he tries to renew the pact, right? The peace treaty. No, there was no outcome. Right? The person just turned away from him, kept turning away from him. Right? And there was no outcome. He goes back to Makkah. So there is no news that the Muslims actually are planning, or Rasulullah is actually planning a conquest. There's absolutely no hint that a conquest of the very conquest of Makkah is coming their way. No hint at all. Nobody had any clue what what will be the next move of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So all they know is the peace treaty has been nullified, right? He knows what happened, he knows what happened, right, from the allies or the Muslims. There was no renewal of treaty, right? And there was silence. Right? So you see how very, so you can see Abu Sufyan, they're like, what was going on? And what is his next move? Right? So it's really unpredictable. What is he about to do? So when I was listening, I'm mentioning this because when I was listening Sirah, I thought that it was obvious the Muslims were going to go and do a conquest. I thought it was obvious, right? But actually, when you look at it and you look at the entire situation, it's not obvious, because he was just silent. He heard the complaint, he kept quiet. Right? Abu Sufyan came, he kept quiet. Right? It's like very unpredictable what's going to happen. Right? What is his next move? That's why this entire thing of keeping it secret, right, was so important to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because nobody expected a conquest. It was not expected. See, you understand? And they didn't see it coming at all, that he was going to march right to Makkah and conquer. Right? And it was in fact the honor of Rasulullah, honor of Allah onto Rasulullah, that Allah allowed the conquest of Makkah to happen without fight and without bloodshed, because that was what Rasulullah would love, right? That you come into the haram, right, and it is peaceful, right? You conquer by a walkover. That was why he wanted, a walkover, right? There was no resistance, no fight. That's why it was important that it was very important that the news did not reach the Quraysh. They were going to march and conquer Makkah. So when he said, I'm going to read this part. Inshallah, we're going to go through in detail this part, because I was going through it and I was like, what? I think every part is important. So I'm not going to skip. Right? I know the previous parts I did skip here and there, because a lot of it was, we just came out from a few years of Sariyas, right? Sariyah and Ghazwas, basically war. Right, so that's why you find me skipping, right? Because there are like small battles here, small battles there. Nothing really happened. People, the Sahaba went out without Rasulullah. They didn't meet the enemy. They came back, right? This kind of things. I skip those parts. There's small sariyas, and you can read over them if you want to, right? But for this part of the conquest of, so we are on page 253 of the book. If you have the book, we are using the book by Samira Al-Zayyid, the Compendium of the Sources on the Prophetic Narrative, right, volume 2. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ preparation for the Ghazwa, right, the battle, right, the Ghazwa meaning the battle of the conquest of Makkah, right, they call it Fathu Makkah. It was not, as you know, there was no fight. Okay, so, but it's still called a Ghazwa. It's still called a Ghazwa. So basically, for me personally, I like to translate the word Ghazwa. Instead of saying battle, we say expedition. Right? You know, it's more of an expedition. Right? They went out, right? But there was no amla. There was no arm fight in the first place. Right? So, and his concealment of the matter. So we see here, when the Prophet ﷺ decided to invade Mecca, he ordered the people to make ready for an expedition, but he withheld the destination. Right? Didn't tell the Muslims where they were headed, right? Because of it being top secret. It's really top, and it's one of when see the akhlaq of our Prophet ﷺ. Other armies, having the upper hand, like how the Muslims have right now, and having the strength, and the numbers, because they expanded a lot in the years of the treaty. Remember when they had to sign the treaty, they went to do their da'wah far and wide. So now the number of Muslims is a lot, right? It has really come. People have really come into Islam, right? So in our time, if someone had the upper hand, you had more strength, you had more right, you had more numbers, right? The Quraysh in Mecca, they very well, as I mentioned before, a few lessons ago, they know they had the lower hand. They know very well they have no right. So Abu Sufyan was terrified. When the treaty was broken, he was terrified that he went to Medina to try and renew the treaty, because they know that that's it. If the Muslims were to invade, there's nothing that they can do. Right? They can't fight. Right? Because they are basically, now the underdogs are basically, right? they are having the lower hand. You understand the situation right now, right? Which means that Rasulullah did not have to conceal this matter. He could have just gone forth and conquer, fight and win the fight and win the battle and conquer, right? So you see that he, subhanallah, people like in other countries or other, militaries or whatsoever, right? That when they conceal the matter or when they try to do things secretly, is usually because they are weaker. So they're using the element of surprise to help them, on their side. Right? But if they were stronger, they would just go there and bulldoze, basically. They would go there and they would just, kill everything off and win the battle and then, go off, as conquerors, right? A lot of bloodshed. So you see Rasulullah is the opposite of what a lot of conquerors would do. Right? He is a mighty conqueror, a mighty leader, a mighty general, right? And with strength and number, and the upper hand, but he's making this secret for the sake of not spilling blood. Right? That was how much he was guarding over the sanctity of Mecca, and the peace of it. He did not want there to be any violence at all. Rasulullah. Yes, some of the close Sahaba knew. He did tell some of the close Sahaba, but he didn't tell all the Sahaba like that. Because you see how what I'm driving at. He's keeping this secret, right? Only for the reason that he wants it to be clean. Doesn't want blood when it comes to conquering Mecca, because Mecca is the city of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. The Kaaba is there, right? So just out of his high respect and awe of Mecca, right, that he doesn't want to soil it by there being bloodshed. And we mentioned I think 2 weeks ago that Sayyidina Hussein did the same thing. Sayyidina Hussein was in Mecca when he knew people might kill him in Mecca. So he left Mecca out of wanting to preserve the sanctity of Mecca. He doesn't want his blood to spill in Mecca. Right, so he went out of it because he knows that these crooks will not care about the sanctuary and they will kill him anyway, whether it's in Mecca or not. Right, so he's, I'm getting out of the sanctuary to keep it preserved, and sanctified. That there is no bloodshed, right, in this sacred land. And you see how it is. Subhanallah, like people, the other form of military, they will keep secrets, right, so as to be able to afflict, right, the worst they can on the enemy. Rasulullah is keeping it a secret so that he can possibly have a walkover, right, with no bloodshed whatsoever. SubhanAllah, it's all proofs that Rasulullah, he is, a champion of peace. Like he whatever you can, or however he is able to, he will go towards peace. Right? So Hudaybiyah was a big proof. Hudaybiyah, Sayyidina Umar was upset because they also again they had the upper hand. Right? We have the upper hand. We're supposed to go for Umrah. It's clear we're going for Umrah. They have no right to stop us. Sayyidina Umar is like, we have full right to enter Makkah and do our Umrah. So it was about rights. Sayyidina Umar is about rights. Rasulullah is about peace. He knows they have full right. He knows it. Right? But he wants the peace. Right? That he makes his. So this is what we will call Sunnah Mawaqif lah. This is Sunnah Mawaqif. It is prophetic stances. No matter what. Even if you have full right for it. Right? If there is an option for peace, it means if you strive for your rights, it will cause some sort of collision or some form of difficulty or even violence, right? It is the prophetic stance, the prophetic way to relinquish your rights just to preserve the peace. And you see this over and over and over again in the life of Rasulullah, right? They will relinquish their rights just because they want to preserve the peace, just because of that. Right. So and this can be extended, into, of course, here we have entire government level, right? In here Rasulullah's time, right? It can be, on a societal level, right? Societal level, right? It can be on a family scale, right? Or husband and wife, right? Just to let things go for the sake of peace, just to preserve the peace in the house, right? Preserve the peace between husband and wife. The peace between mother and child, right? Peace between neighbors. You have a right, but you want to preserve the peace, so you don't actually, assert your right onto them, because it will cause some sort of difficulty or argument or whatever lah. Something will happen, right? So this is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You see how, mashallah, the ulama pull out this lesson, right? That we see in the face of right. Right, but it will not come with, without struggle or violence, right? And then there's a way of peace which calls for the relinquishment of the right. He takes the way of peace, right? He actually takes the way of peace because he sees, like, it's okay, I can forego that, right? If this means peace, and this is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And this is why. Like for example, in Singapore, right? And I'm not saying this because want to like pro anyone, right? But it's true. It is true. It is the way the ulama have said that if you're a minority in the country, right, and you have some rights here and there, right, but to maintain the peace in the fabric of society, right, that you go towards the way of peace, right? So like for example, a very clear example is in our own country, being minority in Singapore. Right, with our azan, right? So we must understand that we are only 10%, right? 10% Muslims. So when the non-Muslims, they don't want the azan, right? Because they're not Muslim, right? They're not Muslim, and to them is bothering them, right? So and it might rise to some sort of ugliness in society, right? So we go by. Okay, our azan is in our own mosque. If you want to hear the azan on the radio, in your own houses, so you're not stopped from hearing the azan. No one's stopping you. You can on the radio if you want. You can have a clock that's azan. You can have your own family member call the azan in the house, right? So when I've heard Muslims complain about, in Singapore we have no azan, who's stopping you from the azan? Just because you can't hear the mosque, loudly like you do in Muslim countries, but can you do it in your house? Yes, you can. Put in the effort lah. Right? Can you play from your phone? Yes, you can. Right? I mean, now there's so many ways to hear the azan by the waktu. Right? If you really want to, there are so many apps that will on automatically when it's prayer time. So do we have any argument? Right? As Muslims, that we want our azan to be loud and clear in a land whereby we are 10%. I mean, we must think about it from their point of view also. Right, so then you all 10% only. You only how many people around the mosque are Muslims actually. That kind of thing. They might argue, right? So for us to look at their point of view, to preserve the peace, right? But at the same time, go and have your azan in your own houses lah. right, on your own phone, in your own laptop. So many ways to have the azan, right? Except without having it be out loud, right? And then the non-Muslims get upset, right? The Muslims at 5:45 in the morning have an azan. Right? I mean, can you put it? You put yourself in their shoes, right? I mean, they get upset, right? That kind of thing. This is the kind of thing, right? Whereby we must know our position, and this is when we have no right. Actually, we have 10%. We have no right, right? And still we have Muslims arguing about it and upset about it, right? When you don't understand that we are actually minority. We are not majority. We are minority, right? So subhanallah. But Rasulullah is, on the other hand, he has the upper hand. And he does this, right? Having the upper hand, having the strength, he does this. So mashallah, I mean, for me, like I found it very, like, in a sense, moving lah. That when the ulama, they say, you see how he made it secret, because he was really guarding over the sanctity of Makkah. Didn't want any bloodshed. Right? That was the only reason why he was so secretive about it. Right? Because he was afraid that if the news reaches Quraysh, they will send out an army and there will be a fight. Right? So subhanallah. Or they will gather the people around Mecca, the Bedouins, right? The different tribes. They might gather against the Muslims, and there will be a clash. Right? So a walkover. Right? Let's aim for a walkover. Right? So that he referred to the situation. He told Aisha to prepare what he told Aisha radhiyallahu anha to prepare what he needed, and not to tell anyone. Right? So Sayyidina Aisha knew about it. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu entered upon his daughter Aisha radiallahu anha while she was rearranging some of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's equipment, and he said, "My daughter, has the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered you to make preparations?" And she said, "Yes, so you make ready too. Right? You also should get ready, oh my father." Then he said, "Where do you think he is heading?" Right? So then Sayyidina Abu Bakr at this point,
They both know already.
no, they both don't know yet. They both don't know yet. Right? See how secretive it is. Right? So even the person Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Aisha is not so sure where he's gonna go. Right? But it's so. Can you imagine? Like, do you all get it now? Like, why it's so amazing? Right? He didn't have to keep his secret. Because when I was listening, I also was wondering, why is he so secretive? Why can't he just go out and just conquer Makkah? Like, why is he so secretive? Like, to the extent, don't tell anybody at all also where he's going. Right? You wonder why? Kenapa? Right? Why was he being that way? He was preserving the peace. Subhanallah, which military general does that? Right? Go out of his way just to ensure a walkover. Subhanallah. And then people can say that he's a prophet of war and prophet of violence and prophet of whatever nonsense. He's a prophet of peace, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. As far as he can, he would opt for the option of peace. As far as he can. Alright. So it says here, Sayyidina Muhammad, right? She says, "By God, I do not know. I don't know where he's going." And then he says, perhaps he is heading towards Bani al-Asfar, meaning the Byzantines. Maybe they call it Bani al-Asfar. Asfar meaning like they are no, Asfar is yellow. They call it yellow because they're white. They're the whites. Because the Byzantines are the Romans. They're the whites, right? So they call the yellow ones. Right, meaning the Byzantines. She was quiet. Then he said, perhaps he intends the people of the Najd. Right? Najd meaning on the side of the UAE. Right, that side, Najd. Right? Again, she was quiet. Then he said, perhaps he intends Quraysh, though they are under a treaty. Right, so again, the Sahaba are assuming that they are under a treaty, but they're not under a treaty. They actually broke the treaty. Right, and she was quiet. Rasulullah entered and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, do you intend to go forth to a certain destination?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "Perhaps you..." So now Sayyidina Abu Bakr says, "You intend Bani Asfar?" Rasulullah said, "No." Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, "Do you intend the Najd, people of Najd?" Rasulullah said, "No." And Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, "Do you intend the Quraysh?" And Rasulullah said, "Yes." So he told Sayyidina Abu Bakr where they are going, right, to the Quraysh. Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, "Ya Rasulullah, is there not a treaty between you and them?" And he said, "Have you not been informed of what they have done to Bani Ka'ab?" Right, what treaty? Right, there's no more treaty. Right, so again, you see how it was so secretive. that the people didn't even know if the treaty was broken. They knew what happened, but they were not so sure what was the implications, of this fight between two allies. Because it was not, to them was not clear that the Quraysh fought the Muslims, but the ally fought the ally, which technically would mean the treaty would be broken, but it was not said the treaty is nullified. So even they were like not so sure and what's going on. The secret is so top secret because there's so much ambiguity of what just happened, right? And mashallah, and this is Allah's gift to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's Allah's gift, so that he is able to conquer Makkah in one smooth movement, and Makkah is his, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's Allah's gift to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, so and then he said, then Rasulullah informed the people, right, that he was heading to Makkah. He informed some of them, not all, some of them, right, and he ordered them to be diligent and prepare. He did so after consulting Abu Bakr and Umar, right, radiallahu anhuma, about the march to Makkah. It was narrated Rasulullah came out one of his rooms and sat at his door, and it was that if he sat alone, none would approach him unless called upon. That was with Rasulullah. If he was by himself, nobody would come to him unless he called them, right, to come to him, right. So he was sitting by his door outside his room, right, and so he called Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and he sat across from him, and they spoke privately for a long time. Then he ordered him to move to his right side. He called Sayyidina Umar. So again, you see the arrangement of the Sahaba, and so many instances in the Seerah, there will be this arrangement over and over again. Abu Bakr, Umar, Osman, Ali, right? It's a very, very clear arrangement. But till today, there are people who will argue against it, right? That Sayyidina Abu Bakr was not the correct leader after Rasulullah. But so many instances whereby Rasulullah himself would arrange them in that way, right? Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar. So you got Sayyidina Umar who came and said, and they conversed for a long time, and Umar raised his voice and said, Ya Rasulullah, they are the head of this belief. They are the ones who claim that you were a sorcerer, an oracle, a liar, and a slanderer, right? Meaning, speaking about the Quraysh, right? They were the ones, the oracle meaning someone who tell the future, like a fortune teller. Right? So they claim all these things: sorcerer, fortune teller, liar, slanderer, right? They slander Rasulullah. And Umar did not leave out anything the people of Makkah used to say, but he mentioned it. He said everything they used to do, because Rasulullah is going to go and conquer, and he does not want any retribution. He does not want any, doesn't want to take revenge in any way. And Zainab Umar is like, but they are like, do you remember what they have done for 13 years? How they treated us. And all Rasulullah wanted, this shows the magnanimity of his character. It's not about revenge. There's no personal agenda, right? There is no hard feelings even, he would say. It's purely about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does Allah want? What is best as a prophet? A prophet wants as many people as possible to believe. That's what he wants. It's not revenge. They're not interested in revenge, right? This is something very lowly human, right? It's very lowly human to want revenge, to want the one who hurt you for him to be hurt, the one who hurt you for him to suffer, right? But prophetic character is to want the best for your enemy. You want iman for them who used to hurt you. They killed your uncle, Rasulullah, killed your uncle, killed your Sahaba, killed your family, tortured you for 13 years. All he wanted was their iman. That they actually became, this is what we're mentioning about spiritual maturity. This is our Prophet ﷺ is being mature. Not seeing that, what they have done, no, we're going to have our revenge. We're going to make them suffer the way they made us suffer for 13 years. There was no such talk. It was just, you're all safe. Right? And when you want to enter into Islam, marhaban. There was not even a forcing. Just, stay in your houses if you want to stay in your houses. But if you want to profess your Islam, come. Right? No forcing. This shows really a magnanimous character that is not normal, right, to the ordinary human being. This is, a prophet lah. Basically, it's a prophet. Right? No, human beings are not like this. Right? Even somebody hurt you a bit only, you nak dendam. Right? Somebody did something to your family, already you like, You know, you can never imagine doing good things for that person, you know, because of how much they hurt your family. It's human. It's human, right? It's just human. This is you know, prophetic. Right? It's prophetic character. Right, so Umar said that, you know, and he mentioned all of it, and some commanded him to sit on his left side. Sit down, Umar. Right? You know, so but that's why he's not a prophet. Umar, but he's being trained. He's being trained, right? So that's why thereafter, even people who turn on the Khalifa, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar, that those who turn on them, then thereafter they tawbat and they became believers again, they were embraced into the circles of Islam. Right, so it's not like, you know, you hold a grudge against people forever. You know, the moment they want to turn, come. Right, and then all that they used to do, forgotten. I don't even mention it at all. So it's so amazing if you can just take this kind of character, right, and just be like this. Right, where you see people's akhirah. That's all you see. People's akhirah. Right, and not your dunya that you want. Subhanallah. So all sunnah mawaqif So many all sunnah mawaqif. Bila buat semua mawaqif, this is sunnah mawaqif. Like this. Right, Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, so he says here, Sayyidina Muhammad. Right, there were some he commented by left side. He then called the people, some of them, and said, shall I not present to you what these two companions of yours are like? Right, and they said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. So he turned his honored face to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and he said, verily, Ibrahim was softer for the sake of Allah than the fat in milk. Right, and then okay, I'll explain this in a while. I can't read through it. Right, then he turned to Sayyidina Umar and he said, verily, Nuh was harsher for the sake of Allah than stone. And the directive is Umar's. So prepare yourselves for a ghazwa. So they rose, they followed Abu Bakr, and they said, we disdain asking Umar of what Rasulullah spoke about you. And he said to me, how do you direct me in the invasion of Makkah? And I said, Ya Rasulullah, they are your people. And I thought he would listen to me, and he calls upon Umar. Umar said, verily, they are the spearhead of disbelief. And he mentioned all the evil they would say. And by God, the Arabs will not submit until the people of Makkah submit. Right, so thus he ordered you to invade Makkah. Right, so what happened here was that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he called Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar to mushwara, right, basically to consult them, right, see what they think, right. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr, right, he was on the side of no invasion whatsoever. You know, no invasion whatsoever. So Sayyidina Abu Bakr was on that side. So meaning he was very soft. Sayyidina Abu Bakr, you know, like, you know, give them, in a sense, like, okay lah, there was a mistake, you know, but, you know, they are your people still, like, don't go and invade them, right. Sayyidina Umar's on the other side, right, whereby Sayyidina Umar was like, no, we have to fight them. You know, what they did to us, we have to fight them. Rasulullah took a middle path. He did go and invade, but without bloodshed. See that? Right, there was the middle path, right? So there was one path whereby don't invade altogether. The other one was, we go march all the way out there and we fight them. We march, but we walk over. Right now, we just walk over them. Right, that's why he said and in a sense, his statements were praising both Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar. When he says Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam was softer for the sake of Allah, right, like Abu Bakr. You're like Nabi Ibrahim, you're soft, right, for the sake of Allah, than fat in milk. You know, if you've seen like real fresh milk, the fat ke atas, right, the cream on top is very soft. If you ever drunk that before, if you take real milk, the fat always rises. Right, if you it's non-pasteurized, non-homogenized milk. It means from the udder itself, you see the fat on top. Right, if you go taring, you find it. You cut in it, all the fat atas, and then the fat is actually a good fat. It's actually good fat, right, for you to actually drink that fat. Right, so but he's soft. Nabi Ibrahim is soft, was known to be soft, and Nabi Nuh was known to be hard. You know, hard like stone, right, like onto his people. And Sayyidina Umar took the hard, you know, to be hard on them because of they broke the treaty, and Sayyidina Abu Bakr took the be soft on them. They are people, right? So some took the center way, right, but leaning towards Sayyidina Umar's side in the sense that he will go forth, right, and conquer Makkah, because he took Sayyidina Umar's statement that he said that the people will not submit until Makkah submits. Because Makkah is the main city in the entire of the Arabian Peninsula. If Makkah is Muslim, all will be Muslim. So Makkah is pinnacle. Right? Makkah has to be Muslim. So Umar saw that. So it's a political strategy. Makkah, it was necessary for Makkah to become a Muslim town or a Muslim state. Right? So some took that, right? But he still held on to the way of peace. But it was going to be a walk over Makkah. Right. So the people made preparations, and the Rasul sent word to the Bedouins and to the Muslims and all that, saying, whoever believes in Allah and last day should attend Ramadan in Medina. Right. So those who were Muslim in the tribes around Medina, right, they were told to come to Medina for Ramadan. It was coming to Ramadan. Right. And they were fasting this time. They were all fasting when they were marching forth. Right. So they should have the Ramadan in Medina. Right, they were those who fulfilled his order and met him in Medina, and those caught up with him on his way, such as Bani Sulaim. The Arab tribes that arrived in Medina included Aslam, Ghifar, Muzayna, Ashja' and Juhayna. Right, these are all some of the Arab tribes that have become Muslim. Approximately 10,000 men joined him. 10,000, Subhanallah. Yeah, it's true. They had to conquer Makkah. It's just like I said, they have the upper hand. They are numerous. They're not all not in Medina. Medina is very small. Right? They are tribes from around Medina. So this 2.5 years of the treaty, or 3 years of the treaty, right? A lot of people came into Islam. That's what peace does. Right? Peace does a lot. Right? So this a few years of peace, people are coming into Islam. They were, as mentioned, even people from Makkah were coming into Medina to listen, because there was no threat. And Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid, right, Amr bin al-As, right, these are the big people of Makkah. Finally, with a ceasefire, what did it mean? Ceasefire means I can freely go to your house or go to your town and hear what you say. For as long as you're fighting, we are both deaf. We don't hear each other because you're fighting. Now again, another principle. For as long as you're fighting, you're not listening. When you stop fighting, then you begin to listen. Right, so when there was a ceasefire, then people of Makkah began to listen. And like, it makes sense. It actually makes sense. And they become Muslim thereafter. Right, but for as long as you're arguing with each other or fighting or doing, hating each other, you're not listening. And there's not going to be a solution. You have to calm down, have a ceasefire and talk civilly, like civilized people. Then you will hear each other out. Right? And then they saw, he's right. He is a prophet, and what we've been doing is wrong. Our fathers are wrong. Right? And when they recognize that, they all came into Islam. This happened in the few years of the treaty, It's a few years of the treaty this happened. Alright, so 10,000 people followed him to march to Makkah. You see, so that's why when I was saying, can he conquer Makkah in one go? Yes. Does he have to keep it secret? No. Does he have to keep it a secret? No. Can he win in one go? Yes. 10,000 people marched on to Makkah.
How many people in Makkah?
Makkah is very weakened by now. After Badr, after Uhud, after Khandaq, Makkah is weakened. And Makkah knows it. Makkah actually knows that they cannot put up a fight. Even at Hudaybiyah, they couldn't put up a fight. Right? But Rasulullah, allowed them to have the peace treaty. Right? That's why Umar was very annoyed. Like why do we have to bow to them? It's not about bowing to them. It's about, prophetic. It's of course it's wisdom from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? But it's basically preferring peace, so more people can enter into the religion. Right? It's always taken the way whereby more people can enter. That is the way you take. Right? More people can learn. More people can change. More people can be affected. More people can be influenced for the better. Right? That's always the way you take. Right? Even if another way is all about your rights. Right? But if this way opens up to more people, then you take this way. Right? Because it's everyone's soul you're talking about. Right? So about how many people here? 10,000 men joined him, and he asked his Lord to hide their presence from the Quraysh. And this is dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because you're wondering, how did he hide 10,000 people? I mean, it's obvious if you're going to march from Medina to Makkah with 10,000 strong, people are going to notice you're marching to Makkah. Because it's only one way. Right? Medina to Makkah is one way. It's obvious where you're going. Right? So as I used to, when I was living in in the past, I used to wonder, how did he keep it a secret? I mean, basically the entire part, I was still like really bewildered. I was saying the first time round I learned this, I was so bewildered by his entire story. Right? Why did he keep it a secret? And then why? I was wondering about so many things. And I was like, how come they're gonna figure it out? It's obvious. Like kind of
Some people did not know.
No.
But eventually
No, they knew where they were going. But the Meccans caught no wind.
Oh, you told me like Makkah as well.
The Meccans, they caught no wind. They had spies everywhere, but they caught no wind. Right? It came to them as a surprise. But you're wondering, subhanAllah, how was that? How did it happen? It was by the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereby he said, Ya Allah, hold back their spies. That means their spies will not see us. So the spies were around the desert. No one crossed paths with the 10,000 marching. And if Allah wants to, He can hide an army of 10,000 people. If Allah wants, He can hide the entire army, right? Or just make them then occur to them. Where are they going? To the spies. So he made his dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His dua was, Ya Allah, hold back the spies and news from the Quraysh until we surprise them in their land. Another dua, he says, Oh Allah, hold back their vision so that they will not see me until I appear before them. Right, it's a dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How beautiful it is, that all of this is just for what? For him to preserve the sanctity of Makkah. It's just all for that. Like mashallah, when you basically love your Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam more and more, like the kind of character this is, kind of stories, the kind of character that sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how he should. And true enough, Allah gave him his dua, and they caught no news whatsoever of an army of 10,000 people coming down to Makkah. They caught no news. So it's almost impossible. How in the world did this go past them? Right? Or did they not see it? Like coming is Allah. If Allah wants to blind people, Allah will blind them. They will not hear the news. Right? And until they actually appeared in Makkah, and they're here. And what are the Muslims doing at our doorstep? Right? And when did they come? Right? Subhanallah. So he headed to the mountain passes, placing a group at every pathway, saying to them, let not any suspect pass by you, but that you return them from where they came from. It's just a way of stopping any spies. So in addition to stealth and vigilance, Rasulullah sent the Sariya of Abu Qatada radiallahu anhu to the clan of Idam, so that one would think he was heading there. So on top of his dua, that he was making, he did do his usaha, right? He did put in his effort. So he sent one group another way, so as to, in a sense, divert attention. Right? So he sent a group led by Abu Qatada, right, to Idam, so that people think, they're headed that way. Right? So it's just like a diversion or distraction. He sent somebody another way. Right? So people think, they're going somewhere else, right, but not going to Makkah. Alright. Okay, this story, the one that I mentioned in brief, I'm going to read through it. Right, so mashallah, when you read through the entire thing in detail, then you see, subhanallah, right, how Rasulullah, he planned everything out. Hatib ibn Abi Balta'as letter to the people of Makkah. When the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided to march to Quraysh, the people knew of this. Right? By now, most of the people, they knew where they were headed. Right? Hatib bin Abi Balta'a wrote a letter to the Quraysh, informing them of the matter. Right? So he, so even then also, there was somebody amongst the Muslims, right, who was going to expose the secret of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He gave it to a woman of Muzayna and gave her a fee. He paid her to deliver this letter to the Quraysh, and told her, hide it well as you can, and do not take the road, for it is guarded. Right? So she tied the letter into her braids. How so smart everyone. And so she put a letter in her hair, and she tied her hair into braids. So you can't actually, no one will look there. You can check her clothing and whatever, but no one will look into her hair to see if the letter is there. So she put it into her hair, right? So to make sure that no one will find out. It is said that the woman was Sarah, right, the Mawla of the members of Bani Muttalib, and so on. Right, so basically this is a woman that left. So Jibril came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and informed Rasulullah some of what has happened. Right? You can't escape lah. He's a prophet, kan? Right? I mean, a prophet would know everything. Right? I mean, because God is the one who's informing him of everything. Right? So these are all proofs of his prophethood sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So Jibril came and informed Rasulullah what had happened. He sent Sayyidina Ali, Az-Zubair and Miqdad, right? Some said Abu Marrat and Miqdad, right, to go and find this woman. So he said to them specifically, go forth until you arrive at Rawdat Khakh, right? Rawdat al-Khakh. Right, there you will find a female traveler with a letter from Hatib bin Abi Balta'a to the Quraysh, warning them of what we plan to do. Take it from her. So detailed, so much detail in his information. This place you find a woman. She has a letter from who exactly, and what's exactly in the letter. And it's like, if this is not a prophet, subhanallah, how does he know all these things? Find out all these things. These are all proofs of his prophethood sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you see how important seerah is. I mean, people whose iman not strong, they've not gone through seerah properly. When you go to seerah, you're like, it's so it's so clear, right? The truth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is one of the strongest, in fact, the strongest proof of this religion that it is true, right? So he says here, so they go there, they took off, racing on their horses, they found her, and they said to her, hand over the letter. And she said, I have no letter. So they made her come off of her animal, right? And they searched her baggage, right? They searched through it, they couldn't find anything. And then Sayyidina Ali said to her, I swear by God, Rasulullah did not lie. He does not lie, right? If he says you have a letter, you have a letter somewhere, right? And he said, nor do we. And he said to her, you better show us the letter or we will strip you. Alright, so that's how serious Sayyidina Ali was to you. We know you have it. Stop saying you don't have it. We know you have it because our Prophet said you have it. So they have no doubt that the letter is somewhere. They just can't find it. Right? So they say, you better tell us now, otherwise we're going to strip you of your clothes. Right? So you think the Sahaba say that. I mean, just to scare her, because she was denying it. Right? So to scare her, they said that, so she got scared. Right? And then she took it out from her. She undid her braids, took it out from them, from her braids, and showed it and give it to them. Right. So then they went back to Rasulullah sallallahu, and it was read to him, and it said from Hatib bin Abi Balta'a, right, to certain people, and they were the polytheists of Makkah. That means the disbelievers of Makkah. Right. They were Safwan bin Umayyah, Suhail bin Amr, and Ikrimah bin Abu Jahl. Right. That means quite big people in Makkah. He's in the letter too. This Sahabi, the Sahabi, Hatib bin Abi Balta'a, the Sahabi. So he told them the secret of Rasulullah. He told the enemies, the real enemies of Rasulullah. So it's in the letter says, O Quraysh, Rasulullah, the messenger is headed towards you an army as the night, which flows as a flood. That means a big army is coming towards you. I swear by God that were he to come you singly, verily Allah will give victory over you, for he will fulfill his promise for him. Therefore look to yourselves. It means be prepared lah. So he wrote a letter to warn them, and he was not supposed to do that, right? It was supposed to be a secret. So Rasulullah, he summoned Hatib, and here we see subhanallah, seerah, we see prophetic methods, prophetic principles, prophetic stances, right? He sees this. It's a clear disobedience, right? Is it clear? It's clear. It's a clear disobedience on the Hatib. It's Hatib. It's not Abu Ibn bin Abi Balta'a.
Okay.
Okay.
He took his Mawla, his slave.
No, this lady is not his slave. It's just somebody he paid.
From Medina? Is he in Medina?
No, he's in Medina.
He's in Medina.
And he's marching out with Rasulullah in the army towards Makkah.
He's really marching.
Yes.
And he wrote this letter.
Yes, and he gave to this lady that he paid. So it's not even his slave or whatsoever. No, but she's somebody who can keep letters and send, basically a messenger lah. Right? And there are people who work like that. It's a job, right? So there are people who are messengers, right? And messengers are known not to give out news. They are trustworthy. That is their job scope, right? So as I said, Sayyidina Abbas, in Makkah could send messages to Rasulullah in Medina. Right? It's all like, top secret, encrypted messages, right? All sent without anyone who could intercept. That was the way they were. So if you're a messenger boy, or girl, right, it was known that you don't talk to anybody. And they carry top secret between towns. You can imagine if Sayyidina Abbas sent a message to Rasulullah and the messenger went to Pauto and tell everybody all about it. I mean, that's a serious thing. So the messengers, they were very particular. So she was like, what letter? She was like, only when they began to threaten her, then she got scared. Right? Then she was like, okay, it's here.
She was being honored.
Yes, it's to her profession lah. It's a profession lah.
One of the person that Rasulullah informed that we're going to.
Now almost everybody knew.
By then,
That spread dah. So almost everybody knew that they were going to Makkah, but it was told to everyone it's top secret. You're not supposed to tell. Right. So but he went ahead and he wrote. Right. But you see, so he did a very clear, in Arabic say mukhalafa. Mukhalafa means to go against the commandment of Rasulullah. Very clear. Very clear. There was no argument about this. His name was there. From Hatib bin Abi Balta'a. His name, it was clear proof. Right. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of, this is a prophetic stance also, instead of jumping to it and punishing him, if you find out this kind of things, you're like, what kind of treachery is this? Right, straight away you want to punish this person. You're doing something grave. I told you all not to tell anybody, and you can even write a letter, pay a person to hide it with herself, and instruct her how to get there to avoid the Muslims. This is like really going behind the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, really going behind his back. But we see a prophetic stance, a prophetic way. He called Hatib and he asked him, why did you do this? And there was the wife first. Right? So there was no that's it, punishment, you hypocrite, you traitor, you whatever. Right? No, there was no labeling, there was no, but he called him and he said, and he gave him the opportunity to explain himself. That's a prophetic way. When someone does something wrong, we used to write lessons at the side, all the lessons of Sirah. An entire margin of lessons from the Sirah. Right? Prophetic way here. When someone does something wrong, right, let them explain themselves first. Especially if you know that they know that what they did is wrong. It means they knowingly did the wrong act. Knowingly. Right? For adults lah. For children, they have to differentiate altogether. But for adults, when adults do something wrong, right? So, and this is something that even against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he gave him a chance to explain himself. Right? Explain yourself. Right? So he called him and he said to him, do you know this letter? And Hatib said yes. Right? And of course, I don't think Hatib at this point he's surprised, Prophet. But you do wonder what compelled you? Don't you know he's a prophet? And he will find out. You can't hide from him. Come on. But maybe he was so scared. His fear drove him to do what he did. His fear drove him. Sometimes we also must remind ourselves that sometimes fear drives people to do what they usually will not do. Because they're so fearful. Right? So they begin to do something and they did behind Rasulullah's back. So he said, what compelled you to do this? He said, do not be quick to judge me, Ya Rasulullah. So he's trying to plead with Rasulullah. Don't be quick to judge me, Ya Rasulullah. For by God, I am a believer. Because he was so scared they will think that he's a hypocrite or a traitor. Someone who would do this. Right? And this also shows us that believers can slip. It doesn't mean that if someone slips and does something, against the law or against the instruction, right, of the leader or the prophet or something, that straight away, hypocrite, straight away, traitor, right? No, even believers can slip. And later on, we'll see the Battle of Tabuk, the three of them that slipped, right? They didn't go for the jihad. But are they hypocrites? No, right? Are they? You say, transgressors? You wouldn't say no. They are Sahaba, but what Sahaba that they had a slip. Right, they faltered for a while, right, and then they tawbad thereafter. So this also shows us that believers can slip, You can slip. You're not prophets. You're believers. You can slip. I think just recently, I think last week or what, they had this video of Syam the Yusof. I don't know if you all saw on Facebook or not, but I was following it lah, because I am a very strong, not stalker lah, but I mean Syam is like, I would consider him one of my first teachers, you know. So also one of my first teachers for the Sirah, and I listened to him first before I listened to other people. So a lot of my Sirah now also is from his lectures, right? So I mean they had like this thing going on Facebook. When some of the big scholars were condemning what Shamla said. Right? It was a small clip lah from 2016 that he said something about the uprising in Syria, that they shouldn't have uprising or whatsoever lah. He said something lah basically. So maybe the way he said it was maybe very, you know, the way sometimes he is very macam dismissive sometimes kan, you know, the way he says things kan. So this clip that was 2016 appeared, I think 2 weeks ago or something. Somebody posted it online. So there was a huge uproar against, like, you know, why is he saying this and why, whatever. People were upset with him lah, right? So he actually gave a statement on his Facebook to just address the issue, because people were getting very upset, and there were big scholars who were actually also like condemning what he said, but not condemning him. And they were very clear to say that, you know, he is still our elder. Sheikh Hamza is our elder, right? And while we don't agree with what he said, right, you know, he is still of our scholars, you know, and someone we respect, but we don't agree with what he said, right? But then in his statement, thereafter he gave a statement, he said that, you know, he apologizes, right? Maybe, you know, it was just a very sharp tongue. His tongue was sharp, you know, in his speech, in that clip, because of the entire conversation that was going on lah. So he actually apologized, right, for being too sharp in his tongue, you know, sharp tongue. Right? And he apologized, and he said for any misunderstanding, and he apologized, right, for what he said, you know. And then he says that, you know, and he said, if you look at my work and my writing and whatever, you will know that I stand on the side of the oppressed. Of course, not on the oppressor, right? Not on the, you know, because people were saying that, oh, he's supporting the oppressors and not the oppressed. And he was like, why would I do such a thing? You know, right? And then he said that I wrote this book of the prayer of the oppressed, and he mentioned that. But he did say that we're all human beings, right? The believer slips, right? The believer falters. Every believer after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes mistakes, but you don't be so quick to condemn them for life. They're not prophets, right? So like when I make mistakes, if I see me making mistakes, someone make mistake, you know, Ustazah, even if the Mufti, even if the Mashaykh, whoever, if they make mistakes, it's human. They're not prophets. Right? The Prophet is infallible. Right? He's ma'asum, doesn't make mistakes. But everyone other than that, they make mistakes. So even Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar during their Khalifate, right, there are quotes that say that, you know, they actually made a mistake in judgment, right? And then when they realized they actually made a mistake in judgment, they will say the perfect human being came and went. You know, he came into this world and he left the world, and now all that we have is just our own ijtihad. It's our own, you know, understanding of things and judgment of things, right? So and that could mean you can make a mistake. You're not a prophet, right? So this is the part where you see that when someone makes a mistake, it does not negate their piety, nor does it negate their iman, their faith, right? Because there was some people like calling Shamza, you know, a hypocrite, and calling him this and calling him that. Right? Of course, the ulama that disagreed with what Shamza said, they also tegur those people, or they also reprimanded those people who called him, you know, hypocrite, or called him or what. They're saying, you know, we don't call people these kind of things. This is not the way, you know, of our scholars, you know, of the righteous. You can say that you don't agree with what he said, but you don't have to label him or deny his iman altogether, you know, or deny his, you know, his righteousness altogether. You know, just because he made a mistake. Can't he make a mistake? Can't he make a mistake? You know, subhanallah. So sometimes people, this kind of stories we see, because he's like, Ya Rasulullah, you know, I am a believer. You know, in fact, he fought in Badr, right, this man. You know, but no, so you see, but he did something very, very serious. His sin is, you know, not his sin, but what he did is serious, It's basically giving the secret, you know, of the government. basically he just exposed, he had a leak. Right? Basically, he was a leak, right, into this of the secret. Is it serious or not? It's serious when it comes to military expedition. In any country, if anyone wants to do this, right, it's a serious matter that you leaked out the top secret in the government. You leaked it out, right? So it's not like, but you see that the mercy was on him to see that what he did was human out of fear. He was so scared, for his family in Makkah, that he tried to do something to gain favor with the Quraysh. That was what he was trying to do, right? So some took it from his angle, right? So he says, Ya Rasulullah, I'm a believer in Allah and Messenger. I did not change or switch over. Trying to say, I'm not munafik. I didn't murtad. I did not, I still believe in you, and I still believe in Islam. Nor did I apostatize from my religion, nor accept disbelief of the Islam in doing this. But I was a man who was joined to Quraysh, but not of them. Meaning that I was a foreigner in Mecca. Being a foreigner means you don't have a tribe. Not having a tribe means you have no support nor strength. Right? So that means I'm dependent on the Quraysh. So he says that, when I was in Mecca, my family, my wife and my children, we are foreigners. Right? That gives us no weight whatsoever, and no protection, and no family, no tribe to back us. The Quraysh were the ones who took us in. Right? So that's why he says that. So I'm a man who joined to the Quraysh. I'm not of them. My wife and children are amongst them in Mecca. I have no ancestors or clan amongst them. It means we have no backup. We have nobody to support us. If the Quraysh turn on us, that's it. So he's so worried for his wife and his children all the way in Mecca. So he's showing his humanness. So what he did, when it was wrong, right? He's trying to explain to some that it's just I got so scared for my wife and my children. I got so scared that I did this against your instruction. But subhanallah. So he says, I'm going to read what he said and the full thing. So then he says, the muhajirin who are with you have relations there who will protect their family and property. Right? I mean, the rest of the people who are here, they have family in Mecca. I don't. Right? And he says that, and I wished, seeing that I had no relations, that I could do them a favor in order that they would protect my relations. I did not do this in cheating or hypocrisy. I didn't do it in any of that way. I just tried to gain favor. That's all, out of fear, in case I wanted them to protect my wife and my children, because he knew there was going to be a conquest, and they didn't know what kind of conquest it was going to be. They didn't know it was going to be a walkover. They didn't know how it was going to be. So they were afraid lah. They're afraid of that their family will be held hostage or unprotected. They were afraid what will happen. I mean, he was afraid what will happen. And then he said that I knew that Allah would give victory to His messenger and complete His affairs for him. So I wrote a letter that would not harm Allah or His messenger at all, but might help my family. So again, he also explained how he, in a sense, reasoned this in his mind, that to him, and he was correct in the way he saw it, that the victory or the conquest of Makkah will happen. It will happen. I mean, he will win and he will conquer Makkah, right? Even with the letter, right? So he saw that because the army was huge, so there's no way they could lose, right? So he weighed it, and he saw that writing this letter will not harm the victory, but he just didn't see that it could have caused a clash. But still, the clash means they still win lah. They still win the clash anyway. But so he weighed it, and he saw that telling them it will cause his family to be protected, and it will not cause the Muslims to be defeated. They will still win, right? So he saw it was not, to him there was no harm in what he did, even though it was against the instruction of Rasulullah, but to him, labas. It was okay. It means you still get Makkah, you still conquer Makkah, and my family will be safe. Both will happen. Right? That's what he saw. So he explained himself to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam And some said, verily, he has told the truth. So say not anything to him but what is good. That means he protected the man because he knew that the Sahaba might get upset with him over what he has done. So you see, subhanAllah, this is really prophetic mercy. This entire event of the conquest of Makkah, you see his mercy, Rasul's mercy, over and over and over and over again. I mean, what kind of leader? When you find someone who just was this close to exposing something top secret from the military, to hear him out and then forgive him, let him go scot-free, nothing. There was no implications, there was no scolding, nothing. Just let him go. That was it. What he did was a very big thing when it comes to military expedition, to tell the top secret. Right? There was one time I went to, years ago lah. I was doing this interfaith thing. I was studying interfaith, and we went to ICA, the ISD. Right? We actually went there, and we went. And until now, like, my memory of it is very clear, because they brought us around. They showed us different instances in Singapore, whereby spies of the past were in the government. So when they were found out, right, they were executed. Right? They told us about how one of the spies was leaking information, right, out or whatever. So basically from there, I learned a lot of things, which now we're applying in Sirah, right? A lot of things of what governments do. It's not just Singapore, all over the world. And in fact, rightly so. Rightly so, governments are very careful about top secret military information. Very careful. And if anybody who is trusted with this secret was to leak this, it is capital punishment. I mean, it is, they are killed. They are killed because why? Traitor to the government, right? Traitor, and it's true, and it's rightfully so, right? In London, the London Bridge, not all things that come back to you when I was in London lah. Like things that you never thought will actually apply in Sirah, and they actually apply. When I went to London last time, right, and you went on the river, right, and there's London Bridge, they will actually point out to a place. Right, so you must pay attention whenever you go to two places. Right? The place they say this is where last time, like, any traitor to the king will be tied there, and whenever there's high tide, they'll be drowned. That's how they execute traitors. All the governments do that. Treachery to the government is a serious offense. Serious offense, especially in the military sense, right? Because we went through this. We went through the battle of Khandaq, right? The battle of the trench, right? When the Jews betrayed Rasulullah SAW, and what they did was so severe. Had it gone through, right? Had it gone through, and the disbelievers marched through the fortress, through the Jews, they would have destroyed Medina. I mean, so their betrayal was a very severe betrayal, right? Because they were an open door to the for the enemy. This is serious stuff, right? So when we learn these parts of Sirah, you need to understand what is politics, right? And what is the norm in the world, right? That treachery, where does it stand? In military secrecy, where does it stand? This is one of the biggest things, most severe things a person could do, right? And usually in a lot of countries, right, it will result in their heads off, in capital punishment, right, in death, right? But here you see, subhanallah, right, nothing. He just did this. He was found out. He was caught. He was given a chance to explain himself. His explanation was accepted. That was it. And but this is the behavior of a prophet. It's the behavior of a prophet, because why? One thing, mercy. Second thing, no fear. They don't have fear of spies. They don't have fear of traitors or the hypocrites. Rasul could live in Medina knowing the hypocrites exist in Medina. There were 300 of them, right, more or less, and he could live there not being afraid of them. Why? Because he's a prophet, right? He didn't have to have bodyguards, didn't have to have anyone protecting him, nothing. These are all signs of what? Of a prophet. Because why? He's the man of God. Right? He's sent by God. What do you fear, right, when you have to do the work that God has sent you with? What do you fear? Right? So let him go. Right? There's some fear he'll do it again. And for us, we're like, why if he does it again? Because he was caught, what? Then let him go through it. Like, what if he does it again? But he's like, yeah, he's a prophet. If this man does it again, like after being caught, that was one big question on his iman. Because you already caught the first time round, and that was through revelation. Will you do it again? Thinking you will not be caught second time round. Of course, he knows he's going to be caught second time round, he does it again, right? But so you see, there's no fear at all. This really shows is the behavior of a prophet. No fear whatsoever. Because God is watching over the affair. Right? And if God is watching over the affair, there is not going to be a loophole anywhere. There's not going to be a crack. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on it. Right? So all of these things are proofs. Right? His behavior, his interaction, his response. All of it shows one who is at the command of God and having full reliance and trust in God. Acting on whatever God subhanahu wa ta'ala says. It's only what a prophet would do. Right? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he says here, this part is really beautiful. So he says here, Sayyidina Umar now said to him, may God fight you. Went to this man, he's got so upset with the man. May God fight you. You see Rasulullah working in secrecy and you write to the Quraysh to warn them. Sayyidina Umar really, very angry with this man. So you see, this is natural human behavior. And what you see Sayyidina Umar is natural for a human being to be. Right? If someone betrayed you, you'll be very upset. Right? If someone betrayed the Prophet, you'll be even more upset. Super upset. Right? So you see prophetic behavior and normal human being behavior. Right? So you say, allow me, Ya Rasulullah, to strike the neck of his hypocrite. So Sayyidina Umar, munafik, hypocrite. Right? And for he has committed treason against, treason. See, other human beings, not prophets, other human beings will see this is treason, it's treachery. He's a traitor. This deserves striking off the neck, capital punishment. See, normal human beings, non-prophets, would see this. So he committed treason against the prophet and the believers. He deserves his neck to be struck off. This man. So you see how normal, it is for a human being to think that way. But Rasulullah said, and this again, it is the words of a prophet. Right? And he says, he attended Badr. The battle of Badr. He's a Badri. Min al-Badriyun. Right? Min al-Badriyin. Right? From people who attended Badr. And what you know. And what do you know? And in the Arabic is more beautiful. It's like, perhaps God or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has looked upon all those who took part in Badr, and Allah said, do as you please, for I have forgiven you, or heaven is yours. Right? Meaning that people who took part in the battle of Badr, their destiny, or the destination to be paradise is sealed. No matter what they do thereafter. They do this one deed, Badr. They fought in Badr, that one deed. For the rest of their lives, nothing will ruin that. It means that one deed sealed their fate to be in paradise. Right? It sealed it. That's it. So Rasulullah said, those who took part in Badr, Allah said, do as you please, for I have forgiven you, or heaven is yours. And Sayyidina Umar's eyes welled up in tears. See, this is by the prophetic word. He felt so moved just by that. By us, because he was to part in Badr. So he's like, me too. He's saying it's good news to all of them who took part. It's good news because it's the first time they're hearing it. Huh? Like, really? Do whatever you want to do, for paradise is yours. You have been forgiven. So Sayyidina Umar's eyes welled up in tears, and he says, Allah and His Messenger know better. Allah and Rasulullah, they know best. I don't know. Right? And they know that it could be. And this is also another prophetic lesson. That when someone does something wrong, right? or against your instruction, or against the religion, or against Sharia, don't let that one thing negate the good things they have done. And this is something human. When someone does something bad, or they disobey, or they do something that is against Sharia or against your commandment or whatsoever, it's human to forget all the good things that they have ever done. It's human, right? And then you just judge them on what they have just done. You're angry with them for that, right? But here you see a prophetic principle. Don't forget, right? Don't forget the goodness that he has done. And in fact, he did a great goodness that would trump any negative or fault of his thereafter, right? Badr, compared to everything else, right? Everything else is small compared to his great deed at Badr. See that? And that's why even in the Quran, when Allah speaks about divorce, very beautiful verse. Allah speaks about divorce, and Allah speaks about the entire time in divorce to do it well, do it good, right? Do it with ihsan, do it with gentleness whatsoever. There is a verse that goes, and don't forget the goodness between each other, right? Don't forget the fadl, right? Fadla bainakum. Right? Don't forget how you used to help each other, or you were once good to each other. Don't forget the happy times. Just because you're fighting now, and the verse is all about divorce, and they are getting divorced and whatsoever. Don't forget that you did good for each other. Don't forget that she did help you a lot in the household with the children, and don't forget that he helped you a lot with finances and whatsoever. Don't forget. This is in the Quran. It's in the Quran. When people fight, or when someone hurts someone else, straight away all the goodness that there was ever done, hilang. It goes away, disappear. You forget everything. There are some here. It gives us a very strong principle. Omar, he fought in Badr. Don't forget that. Right? Don't forget that. Even though whatever he has done now, he did something greater of goodness in Badr. Don't forget that. Right? So it's again a principle there in our lives. Right? People do good things for you. Don't forget the good things. So when they do something against you, hurt you, harm you, don't forget the goodness, and remind yourself of the goodness, to allow the goodness to wipe over the harm they have just done. Subhanallah, it's prophetic lessons. Macam we just went through few chapters, macam so many lessons from the life of Rasulullah when it comes to human interaction. That is what it is. This 23 years, human interaction. It will repeat over and over and over again till the end of time. I'm going to stop. So I want to finish the chapter because it's just a bit more. Right? So then Allah revealed concerning him, "O you have believed, take not my enemies and yours as friends or protectors, offering them your love, even though they have rejected the truth that has come to them, and have on the contrary driven out the Prophet ﷺ and yourselves from your homes, simply because you believe in Allah and your Lord. If you have come out to strive in my way and seek my good pleasure, then do not take them as friends, holding secret converse of love with them, or friendship with them. For I know full well of all that you conceal and all that you reveal, and any of you that does this has strayed from the straight path." Right, so basically this ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down in Surah Mumtahina, verse, this is the first verse, right? Surah Mumtahina, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this down, right, on the account of Hatib bin Abi Balta'a, right, on his account, saying that don't try to seek protection, right, from the disbelievers, because that's what he was trying to do. Don't do that. Right, don't do that. So in a sense, this entire ayat was like, in a sense, a reminder to him. They drove you out. They are not your protectors. Right, the Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the believers, they are your protectors. So don't be afraid. Right, don't do this anymore. Right, so it's more of an advice onto them. Right, so and then Allah began the entire verse by saying, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu." Right, all you who have believed. That is Allah's affirmation that Sayyidina Hatib is a believer, because Allah addressed him as "all you who have believed." Right? But whenever Allah says "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu" and Allah will reprimand or remind, it shows that these people are believers, but they have to undergo more training. You know, they're still struggling with their fear, anxiety. You know, they're not so firm yet, but they're believers. So you don't deny their belief in Islam, right? But it's just that, you know, people, they are work in progress lah. You know, people have their iman weak, it gets stronger, you know, and so on, right? So don't think of it that way, right? That he's a hypocrite. He's not a hypocrite, he's a believer, right? It's just that he had a fear. Right? That was all that he had, and it was human for him to do that. But there was a lesson to be taught. Don't place protection with the disbelievers of Makkah, right? At that time, because they are your enemies, right? Don't do that, right? So Sayyidina Muhammad, right, and then Rasulullah made dua, right? Allah, he said, "Khuz al-akhbar wal-uyun al-Quraysh." Oh, and I was at this point, Rasulullah said to make the dua to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, Ya Allah, remove the news and the eyes. That means the spies from the Quraysh, right? And from then on, there was no other problem, right, of the news coming to the Quraysh. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. So today, mashallah, a lot of lessons, right, from the seerah. Allah, mawaqif, sunnah mawaqif. Must write one by one. Like, and it's all subhanallah. You will not think that all these life lessons from the conquest of Makkah, because all you think is that he went there, he conquered Makkah, right? And then they were like, Makkah is now a Islamic town, right? But so many things happen in between, right, for us to take note. Alhamdulillah, we'll stop there for today. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khaira. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam huwa ahlu. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khaira. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam huwa ahlu. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khaira. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam huwa ahlu. Jazallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam afdal ma jaza nabiyyan an ummatihi. الفاتحة أن الله رزقنا علما نافعا وعملا خالصا مستعانا لنا الهدى ويسر بقلب النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأرواح معلمين مشايخنا وذوي الحق علينا وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الحمد لله رب العالمين. You do that because that is the last part of Ratib al-Haddad. But this is something that we say to is the best way a believer thanks Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for all that he has taught us. We say Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam khaira, right? So may Allah reward our Prophet the best of reward, right? Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam huwa ahlu, right? Which means may Allah reward our Prophet what he deserves, you know, like what he deserving of. And last verse says Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam afdal ma jaza nabiyyan an ummatihi, right? Which means that may Allah reward our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam the best of all reward that a prophet might get on behalf of his ummah. That's the last part. So that is what you say to when you feel so much gratitude towards Rasulullah for all that he has done and that he has taught us, right? Because all goodness that we know in our religion is all from Rasulullah. So we say that in fully expressing our gratitude to Rasulullah, right? This one is the best way to show your gratitude to Rasulullah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dah asar kan? Belum? Dah. Subhanakallahumma pun. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.